Hi everyone, this is Elathera with an instructional video that's going to take you through how to make your very own 3D paper art shadow box. Before we begin, there's a couple different things that you need to have on hand so we can do this craft together. First of all, you're going to need some glue. So any kind of glue will work. I choose to use school glue, seems to do the job for me. The only thing I would recommend is to stay away from what's labeled as a craft glue, specifically ones for scrapbooking, as they tend not to stick as well. You're also going to need something to spread your glue with and a container to keep it in. I have a little plastic tray that I've been using, and the plastic tray is just something that was left over from something I bought. So I keep my glue inside this so it doesn't make a mess anywhere. And then to spread it, I have two different tools that I use. One is just a toothpick. The toothpick is used for finer details and it works well for smoothing in small areas. If you want to use something that's a little bit bigger, you can use just like a strip of cardboard like this. It's a lot wider than the toothpick, so you're going to be able to cover more area as you spread your glue. Also, you may find it helpful to have a pair of scissors on hand in case there's any little snips or things that you need to put on your design. And last but not least, you may find, if you're having difficulty working with some of the smaller pieces, to try using a pair of needle nose tweezers to help you pick them up and place them where you want them. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's first start by taking the pieces and showing how they're going to assemble together. This video is going to cover the Chocobo base, and then if there's any special outfits to put on, they'll be covered later. So the main body is of course this large piece. We have the head, which the shape of will line up with the shape of the piece below it. We have 5 feathers in the tail. The 2 attached together go behind. The 2 free ones will go on top of one another. So that it looks like you have a plume in the foreground and the background. We also have 2 feet for Chocobo. His back leg. And his front leg, which we will slide through this little slot in his tummy so that it'll be partway tucked under. I'm just gonna show it like this for now. Chocobo's wing. His beak. And another tiny plume on the top of his head. So this is how the piece will look when it's complete, before we've added any depth to it. Now before we start doing any gluing, we're going to add depth to the pieces by bending and folding them. So I'm going to set aside his feet for now. We'll get to them later. And we're going to start by bending and folding the main body. There's a couple slits that have been made to help us find where to fold it. There's a slit in the neck on both sides and in the middle of the bottom. Using one hand to hold and your finger and thumb of your other hand, you can pinch along the outside edge. So I'm pinching it under to make it look like Chocobo is round instead of flat. And you can see the difference in how the light catches the edge compared to where it's flat. So go ahead and do that around the outer edge of Chocobo's body. Don't be afraid to apply pressure. And if you need to, you can go over the same area more than once. Once you've done that to the body, you can do that with the plumes on Chocobo's head. So pinching the edges of them. And then since we want the plumes to look like they're coming out of his head, we're going to fold them backwards too, so that they look like they're coming out of his head at an angle. Now we can move on to the rest of Chocobo's parts and do the same thing. So go ahead and take the head, make sure that it is facing the right way, so line it up with the main body, and then pinch along the edges all around. Do the same thing with the little plume for his head. We're going to pinch down on two sides. And the side that's going to connect with his head, we're going to bend the opposite way. We're going to bend it forward. Now what that is going to do is it's going to make it look like it's popping out from his head. Giving it a little bit of a bump out from his head. We'll do something a little similar with his feathers as well. For his one wing, you're going to fold down the edges, but for his little wing tips, you're going to fold them forward. So the edge will go back, the tips will go forward. For the back plumes of Chocobo's tail, we're actually going to take the big piece, it's going to be forward, the little piece is going to be back, and just try bending it so that you're almost crossing them a little bit here. We're just trying to get enough of a fold in the paper so that it looks like the small one is behind the larger one. Then we're going to fold the edges of the plumes down. And for the last two plumes, Just like we did with a tiny piece on his head, we're going to bend the tip toward us and then fold down along the edges of the plume. This is going to lift this feather off of his body. So what we're trying to do is make his tail look very full. Same thing with the last one. Bend the tip forward and then bend the edges of the plumage down. Now we're ready to do the beak. The beak is going to have a gentle fold running down the center. We're going to flare out the two sides, and then we're going to bend the top toward us so that it will sit on his face so that the top is actually touching the paper, but the bottom is going to be lifted away from it just from the way we folded it. So let's take that step by step. First, we want to put the gentle fold in the center. And we're going to have it come up this way. So instead of making a V, it's like making a roof. Then we're going to flare up the edges. And lastly, we're also going to take the top and we're going to bend it towards us too. So I'm pinching the center and the top of the two sides. And what that should do is if I hold it just on the edge, you can see that it pops away from his face. Now we're ready to start doing some gluing. Let's first start with the feet. The 2 feet are identical. All we need to do is glue the claws to the leg. So let's do that twice. And just line up the piece below it. Do the same thing again with the other leg. While we're waiting for the legs to dry, we can glue the beak onto Chocobo's face. So again, because we want the bottom to lift off of the face, we're just going to attach it at the top. So take a little bit of glue and spread it on the top. Then position it so it's centered on the bottom. You'll be able to see a little bit of yellow on the chin. So if you press it down on the top, it should stick out. Then we can do the same thing with the little tiny feather on the top of his head. Now if you have a costume that you are putting on your Chocobo, you will not be adding this top feather. His outfit will cover it up. Now once your feet have dried, we're going to do a little folding with these as well. We want the bottom foot to come closer to us and the back foot further away so that it looks like one is in front of the other. So I'm going to hold it in my hands so one claw is in each hand. I'm going to bend this one forward and curl it around my fingers while holding the other one in place. Now that makes it look like it's further forward. If we then pinch along the edges of the claws, it'll make them look like they're more rounded as well. And go ahead and do the same thing to the other foot. So again, holding in both hands, bending the front one forward, and curling it around your finger and pinching the claws. Now we're ready to put one of the feet on Chocobo. Go ahead and take one of them and you're going to slide it through the slot. You want to slide it about halfway in, so that half of the leg is sticking out the one side, and the other half is on the back. You also want to angle it a bit so that it looks like he is mid-step. Once you've done that, go ahead and glue his leg into place. While we're waiting for the pieces to dry, we can go ahead and start using our adhesives to make spacers. These spacers are going to allow the elements to pop out even further than our folding allows us to. So what I want us to do first is we're going to work with the tail feathers. What we're going to do is we're going to stick 2 dots stacked on top of each other on the right side, and another stack of 2 dots stacked on top of each other on the left side. We're using 2 stacks because it's going to give us stability. So go ahead and take 4 dots and put them into pairs. So I have the sticky sides together, pressing and holding it in place to make sure that it stays. Doing the same thing with my other stack. Then you can peel the backing off of one side and press it down on the plumes. Repeat the same thing with your other stack. Again, pressing and holding in place for a little bit to make sure that they stay. Once we've done that, we're ready to add it to Chocobo. So go ahead and peel off the other side of your backing. And we're going to position it behind Chocobo so that the feathers overlap a little bit. So I think right about there. Once you find the positioning that you like, be sure to press and hold it in place for a little bit. Let's go ahead and add the remaining plumes. We're going to take the larger one first, put glue on the tip, and glue it on, and do the same thing with the smaller piece. Now while we're waiting for those to dry, we can use more adhesives to get the rest of the body ready. So for the wing, if you are just doing a base chocobo, no costume, you're going to put 2 dots stacked on top of each other on the left side and 3 dots stacked on top of each other on the right side. This is going to give it an angle and have it stick out more from Chocobo's body. So it looks like it's coming out on this side and away from his body towards the back. Now if Chocobo is wearing a costume, we need to make sure the costume will fit over his wing. So instead of doing 2 on the left, 3 on the right, we're going to do 1 on the left, 2 on the right. So just a little bit shorter. Since I'm doing base Chocobo, I'm going to do 2 on the left, 3 on the right. So 2 on the left, 3 on the right. I'm gonna peel the backing off these as well. But I'm gonna add his foot on first because it's a little bit easier to add that second foot before we add the wing. And the foot can have 2 stacks of 2 dots next to each other, so a total of 4 dots. So by putting this 2 stacks behind the body, it's going to make it look further away from him than his other foot. So this is meant to be the foot on the right side, which is further away from us. You want to position it so that it sits a little lower than the other foot, because this one is touching the ground. It's not mid-step. I have it trying to come out in the little trough area here. So it's meant to look like it's coming out of his fluff on the bottom. So you can see how it's further back. This one should be dry now, so we can actually bend it forward a little bit. Again, creating the illusion that it's much further towards us than the other side. Now that that foot is on, I'm ready to put the wing. So you just want to center it approximately. Press and hold in place. Now if you have a costume for your Chocobo, before you put the head on, you should take a look at the instructions on how to complete the Chocobo with your costume, as there may be some pieces that you need to put on him before you attach the head. Since we're doing the base Chocobo, we are going to do 3 stacks, 2 dots each. So a stack of 2 under the beak, and 2 stacks, 1 on each side, towards the top. So that is a total of 6 dots. 1 stack, 2 stacks, and 3 stacks. Flip Chocobo over. 1 stack on the top, 2 stacks on the top. And then for the third, we want to make sure that we don't crush that beak because we spent such a good amount of time trying to get it just right. So you can use your finger to get it underneath the beak, to place the dots and hold it in place. That way you're not hurting your beak. Then go ahead and remove the backing. And you're going to line him up so that he's covering the exact shape underneath. His head is tilted slightly so it's not straight on. It's at a little bit of an angle because he has his head cocked. And you can press and hold at the top. And peel these back a little bit more so they're coming out of his head. And then for, again, under the beak, insert your finger and just press and hold for a little bit. Now all that's left to do is attach your Chocobo to your background. For this, we can take a pair of scissors, and we're actually going to cut our adhesive because we want to use larger strips than what we had before. What we're going to do is use a total of 8 2x2 squares. I guess that would be a rectangle. So I have 7. I will need to make 1 more. This is going to take the Chocobo further away from your background. And because we're using larger pieces, it gives a lot of stability. So go ahead and make 2 separate stacks that are 4 high each. So there's 1 stack. Two stacks. We're going to place 1 behind his head, and I'm going to try to place it right where you see I put the dots towards the top. It's going to make it just a little bit easier to press and hold it in place. If you aren't able to do that on yours, that's fine. Just make sure you put it on the background. The other one I'm going to put around his neck, because that's also an easy spot to press and hold. So this is basically what he will look like when he's all done.